Awesome. Well, welcome to September. Yay. And the lead dems have been off for the summer. So this is our first time back. I guess what fall officially starts on Thursday. So it's a good time for us to be back. I would like to welcome Sheriff Mark Brave. Yay. And then we've got Shelby, who's our representative today for our wonderful senator, who is being very environmentally friendly today. So I want to welcome you both for being here. You are big fans, or I guess we are big fans of you, well, at least of Rebecca and you of Mark. Shelby, we don't know you yet, but I'm sure we'll be a fan of you as soon as we get to know more about you. And I am always very grateful that you all have the time to come and chat with us and keep us posted on what you have done and what you plan to do and what you want to do for the next 2 years. So, Mark, would you like to start and kick off our meeting?
Absolutely. Amanda, it's awesome to see you again, and it's great to see the lead Dems, the ones that I'm used to seeing, which is you guys. Eric, good to see you again too. So Stratford County Sheriff's Office, we've been really busy. So I've been trying to, again, continue to create an environment where the Sheriff's Office is a resource to local agencies. As you all know, and like Deb, COVID is still around and it's not going anywhere. But prior to where we're at now, it really affected a lot of people's lives, including employers, employees, families, the school systems. And what we're seeing now here in law enforcement is the fact that, we're thinking outside the box now in regards to how we pool our resources. So some of the things that we've been doing that hasn't been done in the state yet from the sheriff's office is we now have a deputy assigned to the Farmington School District full-time. We're probably going to end up putting a second deputy there. And again, that's due to law enforcement across the country, not just New Hampshire or Stratford County. We're facing recruitment and retention issues. As you guys can see, a lot of PDs don't have that $5,000, $10,000 signing bonus that you could give. It's just not feasible for some towns. I know we at the sheriff's office, we've been lucky. We haven't had that much issues with retention. And that's only because a lot of the officers in other municipalities here in the county and other counties, historically they're leaving law enforcement agencies and coming to sheriff's offices because we do a different type of law enforcement. It's not, dealing with the public daily for the most part. It's kind of where an officer that's tenured come to basically continue serving, but where they can actually, I say it's like a mental health stop, and then some deputies decide to go back into typical law enforcement fields, like with PDs or whatnot. And to add to that, the sheriff's office, we've been really, really hitting it hard on the peer-to-peer mental health, because not only did the population outside of law enforcement feel the effect of COVID and the mental health crisis or whatnot, but law enforcement officers were learning, had to go to work every day, just like the healthcare workers, just like, teachers, right? They're still logging on remotely and dealing with students in a non-traditional way. They're not able to see if those students are, fed or their well-being has gone down, where we've seen a lot of uptick in DCYF cases and stuff since COVID is slowed down a little bit, but obviously it's picking up now. So we learned at Stratford County Sheriff's Office that a lot of our deputies needed these services. A lot of them did. And we created an environment in our office where it's okay to ask for help. You're not going to lose your job. You're not going to get branded as, someone that is weak or whatnot, because historically, you're a protector, right? So you're not supposed to be asking for help. that's something you do in the privacy of your own home. You don't do it at work. But at the sheriff's office, we've made it okay to do that, and we support one another. And it's been great. We're spreading it countywide, so we've included a lot of the nursing home staff, the jail staff, the court staff. So we've put on a lot of programs, stress management, things of that nature, because we're one big family at the county level. So, and we're trying to spread that countywide. A couple other things. Frisbee, we've partnered with Frisbee Hospital. We provide 24-hour coverage to offset their security staff. They still have internal security officers, but again, you know, they're facing staffing shortages. And as you guys know, a few years ago, a security officer was killed while trying to deal with an unruly subject outside of the ER. So across the board, I think there's been a couple legislations, and Amanda, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but to deal with healthcare, I think Senator Jeff Gray, they had like a signing of a bill to offer help for security and protection for healthcare workers. That's been a huge thing. So I know our partnership with Frisbee has been huge, not only because they've educated us as law enforcement officers on what they go through daily. And I'm gonna tell you right now, I rather stay in a uniform than in scrubs dealing what they deal with every day in the ER. They're a godsend. And we've educated them on why we tend to do things. We've had numerous cross trainings, and I think that's huge because now we both have a respect for one another. You know, officers, we don't feel like now we show up to the ER, or deputies at least, they're wasting our time, and then, you know, we're making it okay for them to say, hey, listen, you were assaulted, you can press charges. They're like, don't worry, like, I know you're a caretaker, but you were punched in the face. Like, that's not okay, you know? And so now it's okay, we're educating one another, and that relationship is thriving. And I hope to see that continue to thrive. Another thing we learned during COVID is, you know, as you know, the sheriff's office partners with a lot of federal partners. So one of those partners is Homeland Security. Child trafficking has seen an uptick, not just here in New Hampshire, but across the country. And it's in you'd be shocked at some of the numbers that New Hampshire is pulling out. So to that point, it was so important that Homeland Security basically reach out to any resources they could that they gave us. Basically, they awarded us a 3-year contract. They're going to pay for a full-time deputy to be assigned to them 40, 50, 60 hours a week, whatever the work takes them, to address this child trafficking issue. And it's a real issue, and it's scary because you know, you think of these kind of things as only happening in countries, you know, third world countries, right? But they're happening right here in our safe, you know, county and state of New Hampshire, where people, kids, women, young boys, they're being sold and shipped out. And kidnapped. So we're happy with that partnership, and I look forward to continuing that partnership. But those are just some of the few things that we're partnering with. And I will add that I'm working with your chief, Johnsfield, to try and and we're working together to try to get him an electric, like a Tesla. And we're working with Tesla to try to, you know, create, because, you know, again, with COVID, gas prices, you know, we saw it, and where our deputies are out there every day, and we're, you know, we got to think outside the box. So that's another way we're trying to, you know, approach law enforcement in a different way. So we're hoping to see those vehicles with, you know, very shortly. I know Lee PD will be getting one. Like I said, I'm definitely working with Chief Johnsfield to try to get that rolling. I think that would be pretty cool. But yeah, other than that, any questions? That's just some of the things we have going on now. So
Thank you. Eric, do you got a question?
I have two questions. I had one, but then you started talking about Tesla. So is it going to be a Model S then, or
So
something else?
yeah, no. So it's going to be. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a Model S. What's happening now is like, I found out a couple days ago that Tesla, and I was not. I was shocked when I heard this, but they're leaving California and they're in Texas now, their home base. So during that move, they've had to restructure a lot of their the way they do business. So right now, they're trying to make it so that we law enforcement can go directly through dealerships, local dealerships. So our nearest one, I believe, to us is out in Boston, out of that area there, Norwood or whatnot. So
Oh, I see.
once we
Okay,
get
I see
those,
what you're saying.
yep. So now when we get those vehicles, we're not going directly out of headquarters, but it would ship the vehicle directly to the agency and with a rep to then go over the vehicle, because obviously they've had to put in a couple extra batteries because of the lights and the longer ranges. So I think the vehicles we're looking at would have like a little over 230-mile radius on a full charge. So that would help. My plan is to utilize it for the civil unit, the paperwork service and for whatnot. And I think Dronfield is going to use it for daily patrol functions, community events and stuff. So.
Okay, great. I'm pumped to hear that. My second question, not nearly as exciting. So as everyone is well aware, there continue to be, a ridiculous number of school shootings in the country. I was curious if your office is involved at all with any of the school districts with trying to essentially beef up the defense on the school buildings.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have partnered again with Farmington Schools, and we are getting ready at some point in the near future to host like an active shooter. But first, we need to address the 1178 that came out because there was a little confusion on that bill. The Attorney General sent out some guidance, and basically it's status quo right now. But there's still a couple things in there that a couple of agencies are still not clear about. But I think now that we have that guidance, we can go and start scheduling active shooter drills utilizing federal grants to do that. So we're not, taking out of taxpayers' pockets.
Okay. And then is there any work like with respect to the buildings themselves? Like
yeah, so I know,
or...
yeah, absolutely. So I know the federal government has made available monies to school districts or to the Department of Education here in New Hampshire, so that schools can apply, superintendents can apply for these grants to install cameras, new door lock systems. And I know Stratford County here, we're partnering with the Oyster River School District, our dispatch center, because there is a system called Mutual Link out there that will give our dispatchers access during an emergency or an active shooter event, even a fire, access to all the cameras in that school district. So if there's a active shooter in the high school, we'll be able to link into the school, and the officers will be able to go right directly to that door, to that classroom, and not have to sweep the whole building when the guy is on the other side or girl on the other side shooting up classrooms like we saw in Uvalde. So I think that that's going to be another huge plus for us, partnering with the school district and ensuring that our kids are safe. We're definitely going to have a huge training for that, because obviously, we take very seriously privacy, kids' privacy. So we want to make sure we ensure the educators that we don't have dispatchers or officers or deputies just logging in the system just to see what's going on at the middle school today and or what's going on here. So there's a lot of policy and procedures that we need to get through. But once those are figured out in the next month or so, we'll be putting together a large scale event to try to get most of the agencies in this area on the same page when responding to an active school shooter.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
No problem.
Does anyone else have any questions? I've got a couple, but I want to make sure you guys all have an opportunity.
I'm wondering, are school doors locked these days?
Yeah, so
They
so
are.
Susan, so basically after the bell rings, I'm not 100% sure about the times, but after the bell rings, the doors go into an automatic lock. They're being, I mean, you can egress, you can leave the building, but
Right.
anyone coming into the building to like pick up their kid, they need to ring the bell. There's someone in the front desk that could either, verify, hey, your kid's being dismissed, we're gonna let them out, or yes, you're a vendor coming in, we'll buzz you in. So the door, I'm pretty sure most of the schools now are locked after certain hours.
Well, that's interesting. Where I grew up, which was in New York State, the doors were locked. I mean, they were, you couldn't get in once school started.
Yeah.
You could get out, but
Same. Yeah.
you couldn't get in.
Yeah.
And that was the same. We spent a year in France, Paris, France, and that school was surrounded by a fence, and you couldn't get in without buzzing.
Yeah.
I don't think there were any cameras back then. It was the 80s. And you had to identify yourself, and then they'd buzz you in. But
and with that,
secure.
with that too, Susan, like I know some school districts across the country find it where those doors are locked, but it's not a catch-all. So someone that wants to cause harm could just wait around the outside. Someone gets buzzed in, piggyback off of them, and now they're in the school.
Yeah.
So it's we need to do better and figure something out. And I'm hoping this new these new monies that are
We've got
available will help
cameras
that.
now, so that should help piggyback.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's all. I just was curious.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, thank you. I had a couple of questions. Did Farmington reach out to the department? I mean, how did you guys start that partnership?
Yeah, so basically it was I think Farmington was down a few spots. They had to reallocate their SRO back to the streets to answer calls for service. Farmington School Board then reached out to my office and basically asked to see if we would help. And, I graciously said, of course, that's what we're here for. We're not planning on, again, I try to make it very clear that we're not there to try to take over the school system, but like we're there for a stopgap until the PD can probably get back to full service, and then they can take back over their school system again. But we're happy that we were available to help them and continue to keep kids safe up there. So
that's nice. And could any school district reach out to you for assistance?
Yep, any school district could reach out to us here in Stratford County for any assistance. Yeah.
That's nice. Yeah, wasn't not Rockingham, obviously.
Yeah.
Another county.
Well, Amanda, we had that, so we had to redirect them back to Rock County. We had a school in Rock County reach out to the sheriff's office here in Stratford County. We're like, well, you might want to go check with Sheriff Maceos first, and then go from there.
Another good sheriff. Yeah, it's funny how people don't think about that. And then a question about Frisbee. You mentioned helping them out. Wentworth Douglas, do you help them out? Have they come to you for spring?
So Wentworth Douglas, they have a pretty bus security force. Also, they have a really great partnership with Dover Police Department. And Rochester, again, it's a busy town. So we're in there basically to assist Rochester with calls for service that go to that hospital. And they're seeing a downtick in the times that they spend there. Their officers could spend more time on the road answering calls for service and assisting their residents. But like I said, we're open to any hospital in our county that's looking for help or a temporary fix. We're here for that.
That's awesome. I like that. And then my last question is, because you mentioned our chief, who we've had on a couple of times and we adore.
Yeah.
Just a shout out to him. When we had both the police department and the fire department on one of these monthly meetings, and they both have obviously said that staffing was an issue. Is there any way has our chief gone to you and said, beyond a Tesla, could you help with staffing? Obviously you partnered because you're all in
Yeah. So I mean, again, shout out to Chief Stronsfield. You guys have a working chief, which is it's rare. Once those star goes on the collars, that's when they decide to sit behind desk for the most time. But he's always out there. So he has, we talk probably once a week. Just I consider him a friend, and we do have a game plan. If he does reach that level where he needs assistance, he knows that he can always call us and we would be there for him. I don't think he's there yet. I know you guys have a couple openings or one or two openings, but right now he's maintaining. And but if he ever gets to that critical level, I'm sure it would be the first ones he called. So.
That's good to know. I felt bad when they were both on. It was like, oh my gosh, how can we help? And of course, none of us could help, but it is like, do you have a volunteer team? Like, how can we like take calls of dispatch or something? But no, it's nice that you all are able to help each other. That's wonderful. Mm-hmm. Any other questions for our sheriff? Mark, you're welcome to stay on, or you're welcome to jump off. It's whatever you want. But thank you so much for chatting with us. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night. Right. Shelby, you're up. Please let us know, all about you and how you got to be on Rebecca's team, and tell us what she has been doing, and then what she's hoping to do at least for the next 2 years, and how we can help, because she's lovely. Yeah, sure. We love her. So anything we can do to help her.
Everyone loves Rebecca. She makes my job so easy. Like she's just a legend. She's great. So my name is Shelby Houghton. I'm from Milford, New Hampshire. So I'm from the south part of the state. I grew up here. I've lived here my whole life. And I've actually didn't expect to find my way into politics until someone said, you're really great at meeting people. And I was like, I love people. So I went to the University of Connecticut, and I got my degree in political science, human rights, and economics. And I graduated in May. And then I got a call from an old friend who let me know that Senator Perkins Kwoka was looking for a campaign manager. So I joined onto her team in June. And so it's been really exciting. The work's been pretty heavy, surprisingly, because Lee is in District 21. And as the District 21 candidate, Rebecca was able to get the Democratic nomination, yay, win her primary. We have no opponent, which puts us in a really interesting position. So traditionally, because District 21 and Portsmouth specifically, there's been a race, there's been competition between the candidates. So the focus of our campaign has been letting Rebecca get together her vision for the next 2 years, kind of putting together her own legislative package. And the main priorities for us are lowering energy costs by utilizing renewables and modernizing our energy grid. Secondly is just continuing her work with affordable housing. She was able to pass her housing toolkit in the last 2 years, which helped to improve affordable housing, but there's more to be done. And then also protecting human and civil rights. Abortion is under attack in the United States. We need to get it codified into law. It's just that simple. And then there are a lot of other things that go along with that, like labor protections for mothers and families. Also just poking around at specifically what moms and parents need. So Rebecca's working really, really hard. I know that she introduced, I think, 12 or 14 bills in the last session. And so now she's not a freshman senator anymore. So she is going to be working even harder. On the campaign trail, it's been a lot of, because we don't have an opponent, is making sure that other people around the state have our help. Because there are some really competitive state Senate races. And we're seeing, especially in 2022, how important having quality candidates that work with other candidates will win their elections. So we're helping out folks like Deborah Alschler, so I've been door knocking in Rye. I've been running around and asking people about their voting plans. Rebecca and I have also been bumping around in the state and trying to make sure that people know how to do call time. Do they know how to get yard signs? Do they have someone to take their photos? So you'd be surprised when there's no campaign, how much of a campaign there is. And then let's see, right now, Rebecca is also on a wind farm with Senator David Waters. So just continuing the work of being a senator, and checking out what the state needs. So yeah, and the climate's a little tough, because the other races, although our race isn't bad, we didn't expect Caroline Leavitt to win. We also weren't sure what was going to happen with Senator Hassan's race, and all of the candidates on the Republican docket, besides Sununu, are openly MAGA Republicans. And what Rebecca and I are trying to draw attention to is New Hampshire deserves quality public servants who have a plan, who know what New Hampshire needs, who listen to their constituents, and who are kind, honest, and just ready to take on the job. And in New Hampshire, that means a lot of Democrats. That means a lot of people who are running as Democrats in New Hampshire. So trying to get those people elected, whether that's supporting them with advice or with financial support. But it's been a ride. If you guys have any questions, if you're curious about what the work looks like, just whatever, I'm happy to answer them. As to how you can help. So the biggest thing we're doing right now is door knocking, because a lot of folks haven't had someone come to their door since before COVID and talk about the election. Door knocking is the most effective type of voter contact that we have. I think for every eight people that you get in contact with, it's estimated that 1 out of those 8 people will change their vote from independent or Republican to Democrat. And we're not going to win this election unless we're knocking enough doors. And that's just the truth. So if you have 2 hours at any point until November 8th, you can go to this link with Organize New Hampshire. Basically, these folks are centered all around the state. If you have 2 or 3 hours, they'll give you a packet of doors to knock. I like to bring a friend or a dog or a coffee and go do it. And you'd be surprised. People are really excited when you go to their door and say, what do you care about? What do you want out of the 2022 election? And how can we serve you better? So it's been very exciting. Happy to answer any questions or fill in anything I've left out.
Awesome. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Shelby?
So about the electric cars. So a friend of mine went to, I don't know what dealer, and they said they weren't selling any in New Hampshire because New Hampshire hadn't put in enough charging stations. And that is apparently the fault of the state government. Would she be working on trying to rectify that?
Maybe. I'll make a note of that because that's the first I've heard about
Well,
cars
it's just
specifically.
a friend of mine told me this. I mean, I didn't find it out myself, but she's
Yeah.
pretty credible. So
Yeah, so the renewables conversation, what Rebecca is looking to do is energy costs are really high right now in New Hampshire. One of the big reasons for that is because we don't have renewables hooked into our grid. We're not utilizing wind, we're not utilizing water, we're not utilizing solar, at least in a way that we should. And not to mention that also there are a lot of young people like me having experienced this firsthand who don't have jobs and are having a hard time finding good quality paying work experiences. And so Rebecca's biggest focus with energy is, can we invest in renewables to bring down costs of energy for people who are in New Hampshire, to also create new jobs and keep families and multi-generational communities in New Hampshire? And then also, if we have that grid, now we're less dependent on states around us for energy, the costs go down and we can continue to create new jobs while diversifying. I'm also interested about the cars specifically, but I know the grid is Rebecca's biggest focus right now.
yeah, it's just we're probably going to replace one car very well, kind of imminently, and it's pretty discouraging if there's, I mean, obviously you can install in your garage a place to charge it, but if you were driving at length around the state for some
There's nowhere
reason,
around to.
then, you know, basically you're confined to using the car to drive to work and back.
Yeah.
Or just in the narrow area, and that will hold back. And if that really is true across the state, that will hold back our progress in transitioning to electric vehicles.
You're totally right. I will ask because now I'm curious. I know that Senator Waters is all over the renewables. So if Rebecca isn't, David probably is.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think Sununu has been a fan.
Well, thank you for the question. Anything else?
I have a question. I just read an article today in the New York Times called "The Cost of Voting in America: a Look at where it's easiest and hardest to vote." And they're talking about in terms of the time and effort required to cast a ballot. And guess where New Hampshire falls? The bottom 10th, the 50th in the hardest state to vote. So we're one of the hardest states to vote. So I'm like, why in the heck is that? And what are we doing about it? What are people doing about that? Do you know?
Yeah, that's another great question. So recently, and I'm sure you all are aware, in 2020, we had redistricting throughout the state of New Hampshire. And Rebecca introduced a bill to try to prohibit the redistricting of voting lines in New Hampshire based so this choosing who you vote for and when and who you vote for based off of where you live, to not be partisan. She tried to pass a bill that would make it more fair for a person's vote to be reflected honestly based on where they live and not based off of can Republicans or Democrats get more votes by like making all these fancy shapes and gerrymandering. So the first thing is that piece of understanding that Rebecca gets that New Hampshire does not have fairly districted votes to begin with. So if you are voting, if you're going through the effort to get to the ballot, making sure that your vote is taken seriously and that the way that it's districted is fair to you. I know that Rebecca supports no excuse absentee ballots and has voted on them in the past. I also know that there have been folks who ask for, well, I guess no excuse absentee ballots is just about it. I don't know. And she also, I think last year introduced a bill that purchased and invested in these like digital vote counting machines, which would make it such that people who work at the polls have to spend less time counting ballots. You have more accurate counts of the ballots rather than having to hand count them. Because even in 2022, there were some cities and some small towns in New Hampshire that were still voting them by hand, like counting them by hand, which, and we don't need to do that anymore. So is there a specific adjustment with voting you'd like to see, Deb?
It just floored me that we were the very last. I don't consider it that difficult to vote, but I think I must be missing something.
Yeah, that absentee ballot for me is like, you should have no excuse absentee. If you want people to vote, you should make it really easy for them to vote. And I know that like less than 60% of the state is registered to vote too. I don't know if that has something to do with the rankings as well.
I think that it's relatively hard to register to vote, and that's one of the problems there. I mean, there are states that allow people to go around registering people, right? There are states that allow that. We don't allow that. Now, I don't see any problem with it really, and I don't understand why it isn't allowed, but they don't allow it. So that's an impediment. And then when you think about all the small towns like Lee that do not have town halls that are open all the time. And I mean, the 3 days that ours is open, it's not open that many hours, to be honest. And if you're a working person and you don't even work locally, it could be very difficult for you to get yourself in person to that town hall. So that's a terrible impediment, and someone should do something about it.
Yeah, I'm passing on. I'm taking notes of what you guys are saying, by the way, because Rebecca is drafting this legislation, and it's important to me that all of this is included because you all have great brains. So
if we put our minds to it, we could think of all kinds of impediments, Deb, that we have here in this state that other states just don't have. And then when they add up, it just interferes with registration and with ability to vote. For instance, why in the world isn't there a polling place on the UNH campus? Why do those poor students have to be bused at the expense of some poor campaign over to the high school? That's a damn long walk. If you're, a busy student, you shouldn't have to do that. Why isn't there? I mean, come on.
Yeah, well, at
And-
the end of the day, it's because the priorities of people who have been in office are not to ensure a fair and free vote.
But in Durham, Democrats are in charge, and they should want people to vote. And I've always thought it was pretty outrageous and unfair.
You're right. I was at the Durham polling location, I think from 2 to 4 on primary day. And it was scary seeing the lack of young people that were there. And you're right. I had never thought of it that way, having a polling location at UNH.
At UNH,
so
it's
obvious.
just a no-brainer. I mean, it might be a little bit hard to get workers, but I don't think so. I mean, you could probably get some graduate students to help for, a few hours at a time. People without, commitments to class every hour, basically, people who
You
have,
could do it in shifts, but
yeah. I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, one of the things I often did was drive students over there, so over to the high school. I mean, if they want to vote, I guess I'm sensitive to it because I couldn't vote when I was in college. They didn't change the law until I graduated. And so I couldn't vote when I was 18, 19, 20, 21. Finally, I could vote.
yeah. On
Yeah.
top of the fact that UNH is the most expensive in-state school in the country. So those students are already using an arm and a leg to try to pay for their education. But you're totally right.
No. So, I mean, I guess you need to get the Durham Democrats on board, but since they're probably running things, but it's just unfair, and it depresses the student vote, which ought to help us. So I don't know why that happens.
Anything else that I can answer?
So another impediment that I thought of, it's not a physical impediment, but I know for primary voting, if you're a registered Democrat, but you wanted to switch and vote in the Republican primary, you can't do that directly. My understanding is that you had to have been an independent beforehand. You have to switch over, and then on your way out, you have to switch back if you want the choice, which means our accurate number of registered Democrats and registered Republicans isn't really accurate. Or I should say the actual number isn't accurate because people want to have the choice. I don't know how much we care about that one, but
Yeah, no, I think my husband found that one out. He he wanted to be independent and he couldn't switch back because the last time he had voted, it was as a Democrat. And because of all these impediments with the hours, right? Not long enough times to register or unregister. He was unable to get back into the town hall to unregister himself. So that I think you're absolutely right, Eric. That's just another impediment that's screwing things up and skewing the statistics probably.
Yeah,
Like
I think if we were to see a voting rights bill come in, something about, 'cause I'm a registered independent for that exact reason of like, if I ever wanted to vote like the other way, but you have to go and change your registration before you leave, which especially if there's already a huge line and you can't register online and you can't register unless you're in person in an office, like Susan mentioned, becomes impossible. And so if you were interested in a certain race, then yeah, you're totally right. That would restrict the vote as well. I know also as well that Rebecca has done that. Rebecca has voted in other primaries, and that's been an obstacle that she's faced as well. So maybe that's something she's thinking about, but I'm writing that down and noting that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I remember working for a presidential primary campaign where there were all kinds of a Democratic one. There were all kinds of Republicans who were calling us and saying they wished they could vote for our candidate because they didn't like the other side, but they couldn't. And I think it was the same reason, it was too close to the election. They just couldn't get in to change their registration and that kind of thing. I think, all of the impediments really add up and really depress the vote. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why I
Maybe
love working with people like Rebecca.
Maybe she'd like to work on some voting rights stuff.
Yeah, I mean, she has in the past. So it would not be any, and she's super well versed in it. So these are all great suggestions. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else? It could be literally anything.
Mhm.
Cool. My name is Shelby Houghton. I'm going to throw my phone number in the chat. If you have questions about anything, if you're just like, Shelby, how is the campaign going? What are people saying at the doors? Like, do you have a great place to go look for voting rights? Anytime, you're welcome to call me, text me, whatever you need. As well, make sure that you and your family and friends all have a plan to vote. And I really can't emphasize this enough. If you have 2 or 3 hours to go knock doors, that's how we're going to change the election. The moments like this and community like this set the foundation, and they get us all to work together and organize. But we gotta, I'm out there knocking doors. So if you want to come join, we'd love to see you. Well, thank you so much for having me as well. And I hope that you guys have a great September. And yeah, just thanks for having us.
Thank
you, Shelby. Awesome. You're welcome to stay on, or you can jump off as well. We're just going to touch base and actually hold on for one more minute. So for October and November meetings, I want to putting a challenge out to you all. We're going to do a different type of meeting. So for October, I want you to give an hour, instead of sitting here for an hour, give an hour of your time to a campaign and report back to me. I want to hear what you did, because I'm also curious. So I will tell you, I'm going to give my time to Tom Sherman. I think it's super, super, super important to get him elected. While I love everybody else's race, I think he is probably the most important race in the state. So that's how I'm going to spend my time. But I want to say, if anyone needs any connections, if they want any email intros, any phone numbers, let me know. I'm happy to connect whomever with whomever. But I'm curious, and I want to almost say whoever gives the most time. Like, I want to do a prize or something like that, but I don't know what a prize is that will encourage all of us to do it. I will say, you probably saw from the website, we do have wine glasses and beer glasses to potentially use, but I think without the wine or the beer, it might not be the same kind of prize. So it might be a conversation for the person who gives the most hours and who does report back. What might actually work for them? What do they want? So if you have any ideas, let me know. And then the same thing for November. I want our team to donate an hour of their time at the polls. I want y'all to stand for an hour holding signs. And because I can say I spend the majority of the day there, and we don't have a lot of volunteers. And so it'd be nice to see the whole team out there supporting. And again, it's only an hour. Hopefully, I'm knocking on wood again, it will be warm. The last couple of Novembers have been incredibly cold. I've had to run home for lunch to have soup to warm up and then go back out. So I'm hoping it will be warm. But
I'm happy to do it. I always do it, except I have not always done it in Lee, because when I'm working for a specific candidate,
Right.
that candidate might send me to a different polling place. And
That's
then I
okay.
just end up standing there all day.
That's
But-
fine. Yes, that
But,
counts.
I'm not working for a specific candidate right now, so if you need me,
Carol-
I'll be.
Carol's
I
gonna have
can
you
do that.
going somewhere. I think it'd be awesome if, photos of you holding. Rebecca is always in leave for a short amount of time, which is wonderful. So get your photo with her and then she can move on to the next town and we can have stuff for our social media, but for our website and just for kicks and giggles later, we can look at it. So I want to, like I said, I want to put a challenge out for October and November. I want to do something different. Although I could have more guest speakers, that's not really the point of the committee, right? Like we want to get out into the community and make a difference. So you all know Rochester opened a new Democratic office. You can be in contact with them. They have a lot of, they need a lot of support. You don't have to be in Rochester canvassing, but they have yard signs there. They have the palm cards there. If you want to work with a different campaign, Shelby can hook you up with Deborah would be a great one to go out and knock doors for. We need someone that, for those who don't know Deborah, she's been in the House, I think for the last 3 terms. I think she started when I did. She's amazing. She is a power to be reckoned with and needs to end up in the Senate.
Can I give it like a 15-second pitch for Deborah as well?
Yeah.
She's the person that I've been knocking the most for because Rebecca is uncontested. She worked in domestic and sexual violence work at Haven here. She's served 2 terms in the office. She's a mom. She survived cancer. Like, she's an incredible woman and she's incredibly smart and intelligent. And her opponent, when I was knocking doors on Saturday, there were Republicans telling me, I have no idea why I vote for him. He's just the person on the docket. So Deborah would love your support, and she's someone that's absolutely worth calling for, knocking for, donating to, all of the above, and is running for Tom Sherman's seat. So it's an important seat as well.
Very important. And she's in a very Republican district. So, even if you don't help Lee, because let's be honest, we rock, we don't need it. Other towns do need help. And so, again, challenge goes out. For October and November, I want us to be in the community and to help out. And then, Shelby, you can kick off if you want, but December, holiday party, hopefully we'll get.
Can I ask a question about October and November first?
Sure.
So I have been thinking about, and I need your opinion on this, okay? Your honest opinion. I've been thinking about going to Maggie Hassan and Chris Pappas's offices and saying, here I am, I want to help. Just tell me what to do and I'll do whatever you want me to. So is it important to do them, or is it more important to do state and local candidates?
Oh, I can't answer that question. It depends on if you want to, they're both important, right? They're all important. So one is obviously a federal level and the other one's the state level. So it's wherever your passion lies. Both Maggie and Chris, obviously we know them. They've been here and we love them, but, and they need help. So if you wanted, or you could split your time, do an hour for Chris, an hour for Maggie, I can't answer that question. That is up to you and what you believe is the most important issues. Obviously, if you get Maggie or Chris and abortion happens to be an issue that you care about, they can make it happen on a national level. There is rumors that they will win, was it the House? So keeping Chris there is incredibly important. That is up to you. I can't answer that question, but I can connect you to people. Once you make that decision, I can connect you with the campaign. If you want, instead of just popping into their offices, I can actually coordinate. And you could probably canvass here instead of going to Manchester and picking up packets. So just keep that in mind. I don't know if Eric or Sue, if you have any ideas of what she should do.
Well, I think with respect to get out the vote, canvassing, I kind of feel like it's a trick question, right? Because if you're pulling somebody who's going to vote for your Democratic state rep candidate, they are probably also going to vote for Maggie and Chris
down
when
ballot.
they get out there. So one campaigning for one candidate or the other in that instance, I kind of feel is half dozen to one sixth the other. I messed that up. But you know what I mean?
So the
No,
other thing is,
Oh, okay.
the
Go
other
ahead, Sue.
thing is, if you were gonna go out for Maggie or Chris, they would be giving you, generally, they would give you both walk cards for both federal candidates. And if you want, and maybe the governor too.
Yep.
But you'd have to fight to get a walk card for the lower offices.
I don't even know what a
in the
walk card is.
packet.
Like, I am totally new to this.
So-
all of this.
What I
And
would,
sometimes they used to even cut Carol out when it was the Senate and president or something. They wouldn't even have the US House rep in the package. And that was kind of disgusting. And we would make sure that all our canvassers knew that they should ask for it and make sure it was included. So you can go canvass for whichever one is your choice, but carry the walk cards for all of them.
it's a
And
palm
So
card.
that palm cards
Yeah.
that you can just hand them over
To give them
to the voter.
Okay.
But if you prefer to talk about Sherman or Pappas or Hassan, you can do that. And
Yeah.
then you can also say, and if you'd like more information on these other candidates, here it is. And, or if you wanted to say a few words about one of them that you particularly liked, you could.
On Saturdays in particular, Deb, out of the Rochester Democratic Party office, they'll have like big canvas gatherings with like famous people. Sometimes will come in. They did this a lot when it was in Dover. They'd have some singer or some actor that, you know, would be really popular, or then they'd have even, I know Gene Shaheen made quite a few stops in the office, and it's like a rally. It's a rah before you go out. Everyone gets pumped and they're psyched and they're ready to go. But you do have the packet for everybody. So you would have Maggie's, you'd have Chris, and with our towns, you would actually have the palm cards for Janet, Roger, Tom. They would all be in there because they have created their own palm cards. Ooh, Al. I'm like, I knew I'm forgetting somebody, Al from Durham. So you would have your packet. They would give you a map. And you'd have a handful of packets that you'd go out with, and I like to walk the road. You just park and you walk the route that they've given you if you can. Sometimes it's harder in Lee because we're a little more spread out. It was really hard in Barrington to do that. We were very spread out. So, and you just hit doors and then you talk. Normally when you have the whole packet, yes, you can identify one or two, but most of the time it was an issue. You know, how are you doing? How is your experience voting? Do you have a voting plan? And then, because that's kind of what the Democratic Party wants you to do, is to talk about what's your voting plan. And then, but if there is someone specific who you want to talk about and say, well, Maggie's a woman, she's wonderful, we need to keep her in the Senate, like, you know, you can focus specifically on that. Or Chris is a great businessman, we love him, he's wonderful. I don't know, gay rights, anything, you know, what Chris stands for, like, obviously they're both amazing. And so you can switch up your speech depending upon what house you're at too. So, but you'd have all the palm cards there with you, and you would have a friend with you, because usually when you canvass for the party, they want you to go out in two because it's safety in numbers.
It's also maybe a little faster if things are far apart. So somebody's driving.
Yeah.
And then the other person can get out.
That's when you go with three. So two people can go to the door with you. Again, safety in numbers. One person can drive, and they actually, what you should do is you pull into the driveway, the two people get out and go to the door. The person who's driving leaves the driveway and turns around backwards. So all you have to do is hop in and you go. Like,
Yeah, that would be
get
great,
away.
but I never had three.
I know.
Yeah,
Safety numbers though. You gotta just be careful. So
yeah, you do. I think also it's really important. I mean, if you've got talking points, to kind of make them your own,
Mhm.
like it can't sound rote or it, I mean, think about why you really like this person. And even if it isn't the talking points they gave you, if you're sincere about it and it's coming from the heart, that's more effective.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
I'll chat with